company's been implementing Plan B since the U.S. started to do this about a year ago, just over a year ago now, with the entity list. That's the Commerce Department rule that limits the ability of American companies to sell to Huawei. So Huawei, for a number of years, has been planning on its Plan B. We got advice from IBM and other companies on how to be ready in case there's a disruption of the supply chain. So Huawei created extra backup for equipment. And then when this happened in 2019, so Huawei prioritized the products that would require U.S. components. But very significantly, Ren Zhengfei, our founder, he emphasized that U.S. increased research and development last year, up to about $18 billion U.S. We're fifth in the world for research and development. Increased research and development to try to find alternatives and develop alternative technology so we wouldn't be dependent on the U.S. But this year, with this new rule, if the components come from the U.S., they wouldn't be able to sell to Huawei. So right now, Huawei is studying and trying to understand fully the impact of that new rule. Last year's impact was $12 billion U.S. We got $12 billion less in revenue because of that rule. And now this new rule, we're trying to figure out what the impact is going to be. But it's going to be substantial. So we're fighting for our survival, frankly. Well, there are really two aspects to it. There's the U.S. government efforts to limit the ability of American companies to sell to Huawei. That's the semiconductor space. There's also the issue of Huawei's ability to sell into the United States in our communication networks. On our ability to sell, we make very little revenue from the U.S. So it's not important to Huawei in the short term. Right now, Huawei, on average, has purchased about $12 billion U.S. of semiconductors from American companies. So about 40,000 American jobs depend on the ability of those companies to sell to Huawei. If we're forced, although we want to continue to buy from American companies, if we're forced to go elsewhere or create it ourselves, we will do so, and then we won't be coming back. So those jobs could go away forever. So it's counterintuitive that the U.S. is trying to hurt China by hurting Huawei, when in fact the U.S. is hurting American jobs even more. But we're caught up in a toxic political atmosphere where China's the bad guy. And so the U.S. is doing everything it can that looks like it's hurting China or hurting Huawei to hurt China, even if it's not. Two most important concerns of the U.S. government are, one, they're concerned, or they say they're concerned, that the China government could force Huawei to implant backdoors. So on that issue, we can address that concern. You can, in effect, prove it negative, which is hard. But we can put in place mechanisms, such as we do in the United Kingdom, in Canada, in Germany. We can put in mechanisms so that we can prove that our products don't have backdoors. Well, if we can prove our products don't have backdoors, then we've proven that the China government didn't force us to put backdoors in. The other issue is the extent to which the U.S. government claims that Huawei would allow the China government to steal personal data, organizational data. And what they really forget is, in communications, security is a shared responsibility. It's not just about the telecom equipment suppliers. It's also about the telecom operators, the mobile operators. They control the networks. We sold them the equipment. Sometimes our competitors are in their networks also. And so they decide whether and how and when we can access those systems to provide updates, to service the equipment, or whatever. So they control it. So we can put in place mechanisms, similar to the point about backdoors. We can put in place mechanisms so we can prove that we're not improperly accessing data, and we can prove we're not sending data back to China or to anybody else. So if we can prove that we're not doing that, then we can prove that China, again, the China government is not forcing us to do it. So that's the kind of thing that we are open to having discussions with the U.S. government. That's the kind of thing that other countries, such as the European Union, led by the European Commission, they want to make sure that they address risk comprehensively relative to all suppliers. At this point, because of that geopolitical situation, they're not even willing to talk with Huawei about how we can address the concerns and frankly, how we can make cyberspace safer for everyone. We're working globally on, for example, the standards for 5G. to help increase security. And we're collaborating with governments around the world, with the member countries of the European Union, for example, and we are working with their concerns about how risk needs to be addressed from all companies, all suppliers. And so the world is going to raise the bar in a way that's going to have stronger standards, stronger conformance programs, and independent testing. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to meet the legitimate requirements of governments and customers around the world so that we can help bring the best technology to citizens and to organizations.